Happening today, the Seattle City Council will discuss cutting another $5 million from the police department's budget. And this proposal was shelved a few weeks ago, but it will be brought back up again in a public safety committee hearing. That's happening at 9:30 this morning. Q13's Brandy Cruz joins us live, and SPD apparently will speak at this meeting, and they're expected to lay out a pretty dire picture here.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that need to be addressed, and one of them speak to the reason this was shelved 2 weeks ago is the Seattle Police Department still under a federal consent decree, and so there had been concerns about, continued impacts that cuts to SPD have on their ability to provide constitutional sound policing. And so that is something the council is going to discuss today in this meeting. But also, when SPD gives its presentation, they're going to paint a really tough picture of the impact that cuts thus far have had to things like 911 response times. And to me, 911 response times, the time it takes them to get to your emergency, this is the most obvious way that I think the citizenry can gauge how a police department is performing its core duty. So here's the deal. And I want you to keep this number in mind as I go through these figures. The goal is 7 minutes for a priority 1 call. A priority 1 call is an active life or death emergency. So we're talking rape, shots fired, domestic violence. The police department's goal is to get there within 7 minutes. On average, in 2020, it took them 9.5 minutes. You might say, Randy, that's not much more. 2.5 minutes could be the difference between life and death for calls like this. Also in 2020, the police department says it spent 221 days in what's called priority status. That means that they're so overrun, so understaffed, that they can only respond to priority 1 and priority 2 calls. So if you have a crime that happened but the suspect's not there anymore, good luck getting an officer to come to your door. And SPD also expected to say today that they are 158 officers below what they believe needs to be the minimum staffing level. The mayor's office sending us a statement saying that, the officers leaving really is what's resulting in these long response times, telling us in a statement based on exit interviews, we know the council's threats of continued layoffs or cuts are having a direct impact on decisions to leave the department. So their fear is that if you lose even 50 more officers, you could see that response time jump another 3 minutes. And again, Bill, when you have some, and I'm going to paint it this way, when you have someone who's bleeding out on a sidewalk because they've just been shot, 30 seconds is enough to make the difference between life or death. And so when you talk about adding maybe even as much as 5 minutes to the response call for a priority 1 call, that's really concerning. And what I'll also say is 7 minutes, I mean, that's a pretty low bar for the police department to set a goal of 7 minutes to get to you if you're in a life or death situation. So the fact that they can't even meet that very low bar is pretty problematic.
Yeah, and so we'll see exactly what is said when that meeting happens this morning at 9:30. Brandy, thanks.
Yeah.